the door doesn't knock. It just opens. I'm standing in the kitchen, flour on my hands, music low on the counter, 2 days before my wedding. 2 days. And the door to my apartment, the apartment I've owned for 6 years, the apartment where I built everything from nothing, just opens like it was never mine to begin with. She walks in first. Margaret. Daniel's mother. She's wearing a cream blouse and a silk scarf, and she's pulling a suitcase the size of a small country behind her. Not one suitcase. 3. A porter I've never seen before wheels in a fourth. I blink. I actually just stand there and blink, because my brain refuses to process what my eyes are seeing. And then Daniel walks in behind her, sets his keys on the counter, my counter, and starts unzipping the largest suitcase without a single word to me. Not a glance. Not an explanation. Just the smooth, practiced sound of a zipper moving, like he's done this 100 times. Like this was always the plan. Daniel. My voice comes out quieter than I intend. What's happening? He doesn't look up. He pulls out a folded set of blankets, his mother's blankets, I realize, because I recognize the embroidered edges she's mentioned twice at dinner, and he walks toward the guest room. My guest room. Mom's staying with us, he says, over his shoulder. Just until after the wedding. That's when I realize I wasn't the bride in this house anymore. And if you've ever been pushed out of your own space by someone who smiled the entire time they were doing it, stay with me. Because this gets so much worse before it gets better. I set the mixing bowl down. The flour on my hands feels suddenly ridiculous, like I was playing at domesticity while someone else was rearranging the board. Daniel. I follow him to the guest room doorway. We didn't talk about this. He's already smoothing the blanket over the bed. His mother has appeared behind me. I can hear the wheels of a smaller bag rolling across my hardwood floors, and he glances at her, then at me, and smiles the way someone smiles when they want you to feel like the unreasonable one. Sophia. He uses my full name. He only uses my full name when he wants to signal patience. It's 2 days. She came all this way. She lives 40 minutes away, Daniel. He laughs. It's soft, dismissive, the kind of laugh that's designed to make you feel small without ever raising a voice. Don't start. Please. Not right now. Margaret appears in the doorway behind me. She smells like the same perfume she always wears, something expensive and heavy, and she puts her hand briefly on my shoulder as she passes me. Sophia, darling. I hope it's not an imposition. The way she says it, the way the word imposition rolls off her tongue like she's already decided it isn't, tells me everything about who she believes owns this space. Of course not, I hear myself say. And I should have stopped there. But what I notice, what I file away in the part of my brain that was already becoming very, very quiet, is that she doesn't wait for my answer before she starts opening the guest room closet. She starts sliding my things to one side. I should have seen it earlier. All the small moments I mistook for personality quirks. All the dinners where she spoke to Daniel across me. All the times she said we when she meant herself and her son, a we that had no space for me anywhere inside it. I should have seen that this wasn't a difficult woman adjusting to her son's relationship. This was a woman executing a strategy. And I was the only one at the table who hadn't read the memo. By 7 o'clock that evening, Margaret has rearranged my kitchen. Not dramatically. Not in a way that would be easy to argue against. Just subtly, the coffee mugs moved one shelf down, the good cutting board relocated to a lower drawer, my recipe book stacked in a corner I can no longer easily reach. Small adjustments that individually mean nothing and together mean, this is my space now. She's making dinner. In my kitchen. She didn't ask. She told Daniel she was going to cook, and he said, "Mom, you don't have to," in the warm, delighted voice of a man who absolutely wants her to, and now the entire apartment smells like her food and I'm sitting on my own sofa feeling like a guest at a hotel someone else has already checked into. Sophia. She calls from the kitchen. Do you have paprika? Second shelf, I say. Behind the cumin. A pause. I moved the cumin. Of course she did. Daniel sits beside me, phone in hand. You seem tense, he murmurs. I'm not tense. You have that thing with your jaw. I don't have a thing with my jaw. He puts his hand on my knee and I resist the impulse to remove it. It's 2 days, he says again, like repetition makes it a fact I have to accept. After Saturday, we figure out the new normal. But right now, just let her feel included. You know how she gets. You know how she gets. I have spent 3 years learning how she gets. I have spent 3 years adjusting and accommodating and smoothing edges, and somewhere in those 3 years I never asked myself why it was always my edges that needed smoothing. Dinner's ready. Margaret calls from the kitchen. And she says it in a voice that could only belong to someone who feels completely, entirely at home. I don't sleep well that night. I lie in the dark and I listen to the apartment, the sounds of it, the specific quiet of a space I know better than anywhere on earth, and I think about a conversation I'd half forgotten. A late-night call I overheard 3 weeks ago when Daniel thought I was asleep. I hadn't thought much of it at the time. He was in the hallway, voice low, and I caught fragments. Asterisk, the timing has to be right. After the wedding. She won't fight it then, asterisk, and when I asked him in the morning who he'd been talking to, he said his business partner, something about a deal, and I believed him because I wanted to. Because it was easier to believe him than to ask the question I was already afraid of. I'm asking it now, in the dark. She won't fight it then, who's she, and fight what? I stay quiet. I don't wake him. I just lie there and feel the shape of something I can't name yet, something that has been growing in the walls of this relationship for longer than I've let myself acknowledge. And I make a decision. Not a dramatic decision. Not a declaration. Just a quiet, internal shift. The kind of shift that doesn't show on your face but reorganizes everything behind your eyes. I decide to stop reacting. And start watching. Morning comes and Margaret is already in the kitchen before I get there. She's made coffee, she's used the wrong grind ratio and it's too weak, but I say nothing, and she's set the table, and when I come in she looks at me with an expression of absolute warmth that I'm now cataloging differently than I used to. Did you sleep? She asks. Perfectly, I say. She nods, sips her coffee. You know, I've been thinking. After the wedding, when you two settle into the married routine, it might be nice to talk about the household budget. Just so everyone's on the same page. I look at her over my mug. The household budget. Oh, nothing formal. Just, Daniel mentioned you're still managing your finances separately, and that seems like such a strange way to start a marriage, don't you think? Daniel comes in at exactly the wrong moment. Or the right moment, depending on what you're looking for. He pours coffee, listens to his mother speak, and says nothing. He doesn't correct her. He doesn't say actually, Mom, that's between me and Sophia. He just nods vaguely and says, she makes a good point, sophomore. I set my mug down very carefully. She makes a good point. I had a business before I met Daniel. A real one. Built with real money that I'd earned and invested and grown across 7 years of 18-hour days. A consulting firm with clients on 3 continents. 40% of my income was passive by the time he and I started dating. I had an asset portfolio and a legal team and a board seat on a company that most people our age would never see the inside of. Daniel knew this. He had always known this. She makes a good point, I'll think about it, I say. And behind my eyes, I'm already thinking about something else entirely. Day 1 becomes day 2. And with it comes a kind of escalation that feels almost choreographed. By 10 in the morning, Margaret has commented on my choice of curtains, suggested the spare bathroom could use fresher towels, and asked, very gently, very warmly, whether I'd considered a different dress silhouette for the ceremony. Just something a little more traditional, darling. For Daniel's family. You know how they are. I know exactly how they are. By noon, she's on the phone in my living room talking to someone about the restructuring in a voice just quiet enough that I can't make out the specific words. When she sees me in the doorway, she smiles and wraps up the call. Sorry, darling. Business. Of course, I say. I go to my room. I send a text. Short, 3 words, move to phase 2, the reply comes back in under a minute. Asterisk confirmed. Standing by asterisk I put my phone face down and go back out to help set the table for lunch. But I stayed quiet. And staying quiet is not the same as doing nothing. Let me tell you what Daniel doesn't know about the woman he's been treating like furniture. Let me tell you what no one at that rehearsal dinner tomorrow night, no one in his family, no one in his social circle, knows about the person they've been sliding to one side. The company Daniel runs? The one he built, the one his family references at every dinner with barely concealed pride? He came to me 4 years ago with an idea and no capital. He was brilliant, I want to be fair, he was genuinely brilliant in concept, but he had no funding, no network, and no runway. He asked me for what he called a small loan temporary, he said. Just to get through the first quarter. I remember the night he asked me. We were sitting in my kitchen, this kitchen, and he was nervous in the way men are nervous when they're asking for something significant and trying to make it sound like nothing. And I loved him, or I believed I did, and so I didn't just give him a loan. I gave him a partnership. I drafted the agreements quietly. I had my legal team review everything. And I structured the deal the way someone who understands ownership structures a deal, carefully, with protection on both sides, with a 70% equity stake in my name because I was the one absorbing the risk. The founding documentation was clear. The investment records were clear. Every decision I made in those early years, the late nights, the client introductions, the market pivots I suggested and he implemented, all of it traceable. He knew about the stake. He agreed to it. He signed everything. And then the company grew, and he stopped mentioning it, and I let him not mention it because I was in love and because love sometimes makes you believe that what's yours will stay yours without you having to protect it. I should have known better. I did know better. I just chose, for a while, not to act on what I knew. That time was over. The rehearsal dinner is tonight. The venue is a restaurant his family chose, in a neighborhood I don't particularly love, and the guest list has been shifted 3 times in the last month to accommodate more of his family than mine. I get dressed. I wear something simple. I've been dressing simply around his family for months now, not because I don't have options, but because I've learned that when people underestimate you, they get careless. And careless people say things. They reveal things. They stop performing. His mother sees my outfit when I come out and there's a half-second expression on her face that she quickly smooths into something neutral. You look lovely, she says. I smile. Thank you, Margaret. Daniel straightens his jacket. He looks handsome, he always looks handsome, and there's a moment, brief, involuntary, where I feel the ghost of who we were before all of this, the early days, the version of us that didn't have all these new weights on it. I close the door on that ghost and walk to the car. The restaurant is full of his family by the time we arrive. They gather around him the way satellites gather around a planet, his aunt, his 2 cousins, the business partner I've met twice, and a cluster of family friends who know his name and are still learning mine. His cousin Marcus, who has never quite managed to look at me with full attention, claps Daniel on the shoulder and says, "Big day tomorrow, man." Then he looks at me and nods, a nod that's technically polite but carries zero warmth, Sophia. Marcus, I say. You must be excited. He says it the way people say things they don't actually mean. I've been looking forward to tomorrow for a long time, I say. And that much is absolutely true. The dinner unfolds the way I expected it to. His mother holds court at the head of the table, which surprises no one, least of all the people who should have redirected her to a different seat. She tells stories about Daniel's childhood, about his ambitions, about what a remarkable man he's become. Every story is told with the specific architecture of a woman building a monument, and in every story, he is the central stone. I eat quietly. I listen. I watch. At one point his uncle, a large, expressive man named Gerald who owns several properties and has opinions about everything, leans across the table and says to me, "So what is it you do, Sophia?" I can never quite remember. I take a sip of water. Consulting, I say. Finance and business development, mainly. He nods in a way that manages to be both acknowledgement and dismissal. Daniel's the real entrepreneur in the family, isn't he? It's not a question. Across the table, Daniel is smiling at something his cousin said. He doesn't hear. Or he does hear and he doesn't correct it. I set down my glass. He's remarkable, I say. Gerald nods, satisfied, and turns back to his steak. What they didn't know was that every story Gerald had heard about the company, the growth, the pivots, the successful market entries, had my fingerprints on them. My strategy. My capital. My network. That the name on the press releases was Daniel's, but the engine under the hood had always been mine. I smile into my water glass. I let them think what they want to think. Because power doesn't argue. It waits. It's after 11 when we get home, and I'm about to change into pajamas when I hear it. The voices are in the kitchen. Low. Not secretive enough. I stand in the hallway in my dress and I listen. She's not going to see it coming. Daniel. His voice is flatter than I've heard it in a long time. Purposeful. She's too accommodating. She always has been. Margaret. After tomorrow, it's a simple consolidation. Married couples share assets. That's how it works legally. I know how it works. The firm is the priority. Once the documentation is, Mom. A pause. I know. I've handled it. Silence. Then Margaret, softer, she's done her part. You know that. And Daniel, quiet, something that might have once been guilt but has been rationalized into something harder, yeah. I know. I stand in the hallway. I am very still. The engagement ring on my left hand catches the light from the kitchen, just barely, and it glitters. She's done her part. I walk back to the bedroom. I sit on the edge of the bed. I don't cry. I'd like to tell you there's some dramatic emotional collapse, some moment where the floor drops out, but the truth is more complicated than that. The truth is that some part of me has known this for weeks. Has been circling this knowledge the way you circle something in the dark because you're not ready to shine a light directly on it. The floor doesn't drop out. It solidifies. That's when it stopped being about love. And became about timing. I open my laptop. 3 emails are waiting, from my attorney, from my financial advisor, and from a woman named Claire who works for me and whom I've asked to prepare several very specific documents. I read all 3. Then I close the laptop, change into pajamas, and get into bed. Daniel comes in 20 minutes later. He kisses me on the forehead. Big day tomorrow, he says softly. I know, I say. He falls asleep quickly. I lie there next to him and I think about all the things I know that he doesn't know I know, and the feeling is extraordinarily clarifying. There's a kind of freedom in it, actually. In moving past grief and into purpose. If you think this is bad, if you think what I've just told you is the worst of it, you have absolutely no idea what happens next. Wedding morning. I get up early. Margaret is already in the kitchen, of course she is, and she's made a full breakfast that she presents with the energy of someone who is celebrating something. Which, in her mind, she is. Today's the day, she says brightly. Today's the day, I agree. She looks at me over the rim of her mug and there's something evaluating in her gaze, something she's been doing all week that I've been pretending not to notice. She's checking, I think. Making sure I'm in the right frame of mind. Making sure the accommodating, agreeable Sophia she's been managing for the last 3 years is still in place. I give her that Sophia. I give her exactly what she expects to see. You seem calm, she says. I am calm, I tell her. She nods, satisfied. She turns back to the stove. What she doesn't know is that at 7:48 this morning I sent one final message to my legal team. 2 words. It's time. The ceremony is at a venue 40 minutes outside the city. It's beautiful, I'll give his family credit for that, it's genuinely beautiful, all glass and pale stone and windows that look out over water. The kind of place that photographs in every direction and makes everyone inside it feel like they're living inside something significant. The guests arrive in stages. Daniel's family fills the right side of the room quickly, abundantly, the way a river fills its banks, naturally, with the confidence of people who believe the space was made for them. My side fills more slowly, more quietly, and I notice the contrast and I note it. I get dressed in a small room off the main hall. My best friend Amara is with me, the only person besides my legal team who knows what's actually happening today. She hands me my bouquet and looks at me with an expression that is equal parts admiration and concern. You're sure, she says. It's not a question. I'm sure, I say. After today, everything changes. After today, I agree, everything already will have changed. I'm just making it visible. She nods. She squeezes my hand. I've got the documents. Claire's in position. Your attorney is in the second row on the left. I know. Sophia. She looks at me hard. Are you okay? I look at myself in the mirror for a moment. The dress. The flowers. The face of someone who has made a decision and is standing fully inside it. I'm better than okay, I say. Let's go. The ceremony begins. The music starts and I walk down the aisle and I watch Daniel's face as I approach. He's smiling. He looks genuinely happy, and I let myself have one more moment of grief for that, for the version of this moment that could have been real, that should have been real, that he dismantled with a quiet late-night conversation in my own kitchen while he thought I was asleep. I reach him. He takes my hand. I let him. The officiant begins, and the room settles into that particular sacred hush of a wedding ceremony, and Daniel is looking at me with something that looks exactly like love, and I think, you're a good performer, Daniel. I'll give you that, I'm better. The ceremony is maybe 12 minutes in when the officiant reaches the vows. Daniel goes first. He holds both my hands, and his voice is warm and even and full of the particular eloquence of someone who has always known how to present himself. He talks about partnership. He talks about building something together. He uses the word together 6 times. I count. He finishes. There's a sound from the room, warm, collective, the sound of an audience that believes in what it's watching. The officiant turns to me. Sophia, he says gently. Your vows. I look down at the card in my hand. I told everyone I'd written my vows on a card. The card is real. But it's not the one I'm going to read. I look up. I look at Daniel. I look at Margaret in the front row, pearl earrings, composed expression, the face of a woman who believes she is 45 seconds from winning. I say, quietly but clearly, actually, before I do, I'd like to say something. The room shifts. It's subtle, the way rooms shift, a collective micro-movement, a slight lean forward, a change in the atmospheric pressure. Daniel blinks. Soft, I'll just be a moment, I say. I step slightly to the side, toward the small table where Amara is standing, where she has been standing for the last 20 minutes with a slim folder and her own very calm expression. We're here to celebrate a partnership, I say to the room. My voice is conversational. Even. And I think that's the right word. Because everything Daniel and I have built together, everything his family has celebrated and praised over the last 4 years, was, in fact, a partnership. Daniel's smile has not disappeared. It's doing something more complicated than disappearing. It's holding itself in place by muscle memory alone while his eyes ask a question he hasn't said out loud yet. Sophia. His voice is careful. This is our wedding. I know. I nod. And I want to make sure everyone here has accurate information before it goes any further. Margaret stands. She is very controlled about it, she doesn't lurch or reach, she simply rises, and her voice is the voice of someone who has managed situations her whole life. Sophia, darling. This isn't the time, Margaret. I look at her directly, for perhaps the first time without filtering myself first. Please sit down. She sits. I'm not sure she means to. But she does. I turn back to the room. 200 faces, all aimed at me. 4 years ago, I say, Daniel came to me with a concept and no capital. I gave him both. I structured a partnership agreement, reviewed by legal teams on both sides, that gave me 70% equity in what became Harlow Consulting Group. The investment records, the founding documents, the board minutes, all of it reflecting my primary ownership. I nod to Amara. She opens the folder. I've heard, at many dinners and events, that Daniel built this company. That he is the entrepreneur. That I am fortunate to be beside him. I pause, not for drama, though it works as drama, but because the next words matter and I want them to land precisely. I would like to clarify that record. Amara begins distributing documents to the front rows. Quietly, efficiently, like this was always what today was going to be. Daniel steps toward me. His voice has dropped, and there's an edge in it I haven't heard before, an edge that confirms something I've suspected, that there's a version of him that appears when he's been cornered, and it is not the version he presents publicly. What are you doing? He says, very quietly. What is this? Evidence, I say. Simply. This is our wedding day. His voice has heat in it now. You're doing this here? In front of everyone? You moved your mother into my home 2 days before our wedding without asking me, I say. You plan to consolidate my assets into a joint marital estate the morning after the ceremony. I have the recordings. The room makes a sound. It's not a word. It's the sound of 200 people recalibrating. I have the recordings, I say again, to the room this time, and Amara is already connecting her phone to the venue speaker system, which I arranged access to 3 days ago. Daniel's voice fills the room. His mother's voice. The kitchen. Late at night. She's not going to see it coming, after tomorrow, it's a simple consolidation, she's done her part, I watch Margaret's face during the playback. I have never seen her lose composure before. She is losing it now, not dramatically, not loudly, but in the way a carefully built structure loses composure, starting at the edges, small visible failures in the architecture, until the whole thing is visibly unsound. The recording ends. Silence. Not the sacred silence of a wedding ceremony. Something heavier. Something that has weight and temperature. I turn to Daniel. He is looking at me with an expression I have no name for. It's beyond anger, Beyond embarrassment, it's the expression of someone who has just understood that the person they believed they were managing was, in fact, the one running the game. You didn't build Harlow Consulting, I say, and my voice is completely level. I did. And as majority owner, as 70% stakeholder, as the primary investor, as the person whose financial network established your first 8 clients, I have, as of this morning, initiated your formal removal from the board. I reach into the folder that Amara holds out to me and I place a single document on the table in front of him. Your attorney has a copy, I say. This is yours. He looks at the document. He doesn't pick it up. My attorney, a woman named Patricia who is excellent at her job and very good in rooms, stands from the second row on the left. She is calm. She is dressed beautifully. She says, to the room in general, the documents are all legal and in order. Any questions can be directed to our office. And she sits back down. The silence continues. It is the most extraordinary silence I have ever stood inside. What happens next is not orderly. Daniel picks up the document and sets it back down. He says my name. He says it the way people say a name when they're not sure what they're asking for, Sophia, like the word itself might return him to a moment before this one. You recorded us, he says. His voice is different now. Quieter in a way that isn't calm. In our home. You recorded us. In my home, I say. And yes. Why? He looks at me and for a moment he looks genuinely lost, which is the most honest he has been with me in a long time. Why didn't you just talk to me? If you knew. Why not just say something? And this is the question I've been preparing to answer since the night I stood in the hallway and heard his mother say she's done her part, because, I say carefully, I needed to know how far it would go. And because some conversations have to happen in rooms where the truth can't be walked back. He opens his mouth. He closes it. Marcus, from 3 rows back, is this real? He's asking his neighbor, but it carries. Gerald, loudly, to no one in particular, what on earth? Margaret has stood up again. This time her composure is not intact and she isn't pretending otherwise. This is a spectacle, she says, and her voice is sharp in a way that cuts across the room's ambient noise. This is an absolute spectacle and I will not, Margaret. Patricia, my attorney, from the second row, doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't need to. The documentation has been filed. The board decisions are effective as of this morning. I'd strongly suggest you speak with your own legal counsel before making any further statements in a room full of witnesses. Margaret looks at Patricia. Patricia looks back at her with the precise expression of a woman who has won a great many arguments and has the patience of someone who knows she'll win this one too. Margaret sits down. Someone in the back of the room, I don't know who, I'll never know who, starts to clap. Once, twice. And then it stops, because this is not that kind of moment. This is something more serious. But I hear it, and somewhere very deep down, beneath everything professional and calculated, something in me receives it. The guests begin moving. Not panicking, there's no panic, there's a kind of stunned social dispersal. The way people move when a room's purpose has fundamentally changed and no one has been given new instructions. They cluster, they murmur. Some of Daniel's family moves toward him, some move toward the exit, some simply stand and look at the floor with expressions of private recalculation. Daniel is still standing in front of me. He has gone very still in the way people go still when they don't know which direction to move. Sophia. His voice is low. His eyes are doing something complicated. Everything I built, I worked for. You know that. I do know that, I say, because it's true, and because I'm not interested in dishonesty. You worked hard. You're talented. And you used that talent and that work to build on a foundation that was mine, And then you plan to use a marriage certificate to take ownership of the foundation itself. I pause. You can't have it both ways, Daniel. I wasn't, he stops. Starts again. It wasn't like you think. I have the recording, I say gently. He looks at the floor. The business access has been suspended as of this morning, I continue. The corporate accounts, the operating authority, the board seat. Patricia will walk you through the transition. You'll retain your salary through the end of the quarter and your shares in the subsidiary, the shares that were always solely yours. This isn't designed to destroy you. But it is designed to be clear. He looks up at me. You're not even angry, he says. I was angry, I say. I had about 12 hours of anger. Then I had work to do. He almost laughs. It's a terrible, broken sound. God, Sophia. Yeah, I say quietly. I know. Behind him, I can see his mother being spoken to in a rapid undertone by Gerald, who seems to be performing some kind of damage assessment function. I watch her face as she listens. The authority drains out of it visually, like watching a tide go out, all that certainty, all that managed calm, retreating, and what's left underneath is smaller and less certain and almost, for a moment, human. Almost. The venue staff are beginning to appear at the edges of the room, uncertain about protocol, because there is no protocol for this. Amara appears at my side, quietly, the way she always does when she senses I might need reinforcement. How are you? She murmurs. Finishing, I say. She nods. She understands. There's a moment I want to tell you about, because I think it matters. Daniel's cousin Marcus, the one who looked through me every time we met, the one who called me by my last name wrong twice and never corrected himself, walks past me toward the door and stops. He looks at me for a moment. A real look, not the half-second nod of social obligation but an actual look, the kind that requires full attention. I didn't know any of that, he says. I know, I say. About the company. About what he stops. Shakes his head. I thought you were just, I know what you thought, I say. He's quiet for a moment. Then, I'm sorry. And he means it. I can hear that he means it. Thank you, Marcus, I say. He nods and walks out. That's the part they don't show you in the films about moments like this one. That it's not entirely clean. That some of the collateral, some of the people who were wrong about you, who underestimated you, who never looked closely enough, are also just people who didn't know. And for those people, this moment is genuinely disorienting, and their disorientation is real, and it's not nothing. But it doesn't change what had to happen. The guests are mostly gone within 30 minutes. The venue staff begins the quiet work of clearing, glasses, flowers, chairs reorganized from ceremony to something without a name. Patricia sits with me at a table near the window and walks me through the immediate next steps, and I listen carefully because even now, even after everything, there is process and there is protocol and both of them matter. Daniel has gone outside. I can see him through the window, standing by his car, phone pressed to his ear, posture of someone navigating catastrophe. His mother stands a few feet away, arms crossed, looking at a point in the middle distance. They are not talking to each other. There is something almost poetic about that, two people who operated in perfect alignment for so long, now standing in their own separate silences. Gerald drives past them without stopping. I watch this from inside the glass, from the table where my attorney is speaking to me in precise, competent sentences, and I feel something I wasn't expecting to feel. Not triumph. Not the particular warm electricity of victory that I imagined in the dark weeks of planning this. Something quieter. Something that is closer to relief. The feeling of a weight you've been carrying so long you forgot it was weight, finally set down. Amara brings me tea from somewhere. She sits across from me and she doesn't say anything for a while, just sits there in the particular way of people who know you well enough to understand when words would be in the way. "He really didn't think you'd do it," she says eventually. "No, I agree. He thought you were too in love with him." "I was," I say. "For a long time." "And then?" I think about the hallway. The lamplight. The sound of Margaret's voice saying she's done her part, and then I realized that love, by itself, is not a business strategy. And I had a business to protect. Amara nods. She wraps her hands around her own tea. "What happens now?" I look around the room. The flowers are still up, white and ivory, very classic, Margaret's choice, and the light through the water-facing windows is doing something extraordinary, all that late afternoon gold spilling across pale stone floors. It's a genuinely beautiful venue. "Now," I say, "we use the catering. I've already paid for it. And I've asked the venue to change the signage." She stares at me. "You're serious?" "I am entirely serious." Amara leans back and laughs, a real laugh, sudden and bright, the kind that startles everyone nearby. "Sophia." "The bar is open," I say. "And I have about 40 calls to make to clients and partners who were invited today as guests. I'd rather make them in person." I look at her. I'm relaunching the firm under my name. Today felt like a reasonable day to start. Within an hour, the venue has transformed. Not dramatically, the flowers are still there, the windows still gold, the tables still set. But the name has changed on the signage at the entrance and at the bar. Where it said Daniel and Sophia in elegant script, it now says something simpler, something that requires no other name alongside it, Sophia Harlow. An evening of new beginnings, my people have started arriving. Not wedding guests, different people. The clients Patricia reached out to over the last 72 hours. The business contacts Amara quietly messaged this morning. A journalist I know who covers business and finance. A woman from my board who flew in from another city because she'd heard what today was going to be and wanted to be in the room. They arrive and they look around at the flowers and the water views and the gold light and they all, every one of them, understand immediately that something real is happening here. I move through this room differently than I moved through any other room today. There's no tray. No orders. No performance of smallness. I stop at a table near the window where a woman named Helen, one of my first clients, years ago, back when I was still figuring out what I was building, is sitting with her husband. She stands when she sees me and she takes both my hands and she says, "I always knew this day would come. I just didn't know it would look like this." Neither did I admit. But I think it looks right. She laughs. It looks exactly right. I move through the room and I talk to people and I make the calls I came here to make, not in a corner, not quietly, but at tables with drinks and documents and the particular energy of people who believe in something because they've seen it work. My firm. My vision. My name on the building now in the most literal possible sense. At one point I stop near the window. And I look out at the water and I think about Daniel. About who he was before this, about who I believed he was, about the early years when we were genuinely building something together and the belief felt real and mutual. I let myself have that grief. Not for long, but enough to honor it. Enough to acknowledge that something real did exist before the plan replaced it. Then I let it go. Because it's a genuinely extraordinary evening and there's a lot of work to do. It's late when the last guests leave. The venue staff are finishing their quiet work, and the flowers are coming down, and Amara is sitting on the edge of a table scrolling through her phone with an expression of tremendous satisfaction. Patricia has gone home with a handshake and a promise to call in the morning. The journalist left with a story that will run before the week is out. I walk back through the main hall one more time. It's the same room it was this morning. Same windows, same floors, same angles of space. But it feels profoundly different, not because anything physical has changed, but because of what has happened inside it. What has been named and what has been ended and what has begun. I think about the suitcases rolling across my hardwood floors 2 days ago. The sound of Daniel's zipper. The way Margaret opened the guest room closet with the certainty of someone who had already decided that space was hers. I think about all the dinners. All the small adjustments. All the versions of myself I scaled back to make room for other people's versions of who they needed me to be. I think about standing in the hallway at 11 o'clock at night in my dress, engagement ring catching the light, and making the decision to stop reacting. My phone buzzes. A text from an unknown number that resolves, as I read it, into Daniel's mother's contact. She must have gotten a new phone. It says, simply, "We need to talk." I look at the message for a moment. I put the phone in my bag. I walk to the window and I look out at the water, which is dark now and reflective, holding the lights of the city upside down in its surface like a parallel world. And I think, there is nothing to talk about. The talking is done. The documents are filed. The recordings are preserved. The truth is out in a room full of witnesses and it cannot be put back. There is no negotiation that would be useful. There is no conversation that would clarify things further. What is done, and it is done correctly, and it is done on my timeline, in my venue, in my name. Amara appears beside me. She leans against the window frame and looks out at the same water. "So," she says. "How does it feel?" I consider the question honestly, because Amara has always deserved honesty and I've always tried to give it to her. "Strange," I say. "Lighter than I expected. A little sad, in places." I pause. "But right. It feels right." She nods. "What does Sophia Harlow do next?" I almost smile. "Run a company," I say. The right way. Under the right name. Without anyone's permission. "And Daniel?" "Daniel is talented," I say. "He'll land somewhere. He'll build something. He just won't build it with my money or my name or my signature on the founding documents without acknowledging what that means." I look at her. That's all I ever actually wanted. Acknowledgement. Honesty. Partnership in the real sense. "And when he couldn't give you that, then I protected myself," I say. "The way I should have done earlier." Amara is quiet for a moment. Then, "You know what's funny? When you first told me the plan, 6 weeks ago? I thought maybe you were overreacting. That it would turn out to be a misunderstanding. And?" She shakes her head slowly. "That recording in the kitchen. She's done her part." Her voice goes flat on the words. "No. There was nothing to misunderstand." "No, I agree. There wasn't." We stand there for a while in the comfortable silence of people who have been through something together. Outside, a boat crosses the far edge of the water, trailing light. I pick up the bouquet from where it's been sitting on a table near the door. White and ivory, slightly wilted now, the flowers that were meant for something else. I hold it for a moment. Then I set it back down. I don't need it for where I'm going. I pick up my bag instead, the bag with my phone and my documents and the keys to the apartment that has always been mine, and I walk toward the exit. At the door, I stop. I turn back and look at the room one final time. The same room where I served champagne at my own engagement party 6 months ago while Daniel's family snapped their fingers at me and his mother laughed and said, "Oh, she just likes to keep busy." The same room where I balanced a tray with steady hands and counted down minutes and made myself invisible so that no one would see what was actually in motion. The same room where, tonight, they finally looked. I stand in the doorway and I think of the woman who walked into this room this morning in a white dress, holding borrowed flowers, prepared to make the most important business decision of her life inside the shape of a wedding ceremony. She walked in as a bride. She walked out as herself. I think about what I might say to explain this. To explain what it feels like to be systematically underestimated by people who should have known better. To have your work appropriated and your space colonized and your patience mistaken for weakness, over and over, until the patience runs out and what's underneath it is not weakness at all. I think about what I'd say to anyone watching this who has ever been in a room where they were the only one who knew the truth. Who has ever stayed quiet when quiet was a strategy and not a surrender? Who has ever let someone believe they were winning because exposing them too early would compromise the outcome? I'd say, the patience is not nothing. The silence is not defeat. The careful, deliberate, invisible work of building something unassailable while other people believe you are simply compliant, that is not victimhood. That is a particular kind of intelligence that does not announce itself. Power doesn't argue. It waits. And then, when the room is full, and the documents are filed, and the recordings are ready, and the witnesses are seated, it walks to the front of the room and it speaks. And the speaking is enough. It is always enough. I walk out into the night. The air is cooler than I expected, that specific September coolness that arrives precisely when summer runs out of arguments. My shoes are still on. My hair is still up. I'm still wearing the dress. I'll change eventually. But right now I want to walk out of this venue as the person I walked in as, without giving the dress back to the fantasy it was supposed to represent. It's a good dress. It was never the problem. My car is at the far end of the lot. I walk toward it slowly, not because I'm tired, though I am tired, a deep inner tired, but because I want the walk to last. I want to feel the ground under my shoes and the air on my arms and the specific reality of this specific night. My phone buzzes again. This time it's Patricia. A short message, all clean. Talk tomorrow. You were remarkable, I type back, thank you for everything, and then I get in the car. I sit there for a moment before I start it. The venue lights reflect off the windshield. Inside the building, I can see the last of the staff moving around, and the flowers, and the tables, and the faint glow of the event I built out of the ruins of the event someone else planned. I did that. I built that. Like I built everything else. And this time, the building is in my name from the beginning. I start the car. The road opens up ahead of me, and the city lights are somewhere in the distance. And the night is long and full of the particular possibility that follows things that had to be done finally being done. I drive. 3 weeks later, I'm in a meeting room on the 14th floor of a building that has my firm's name on the directory at the entrance. Sophia Harlow Consulting. My attorney sits to my left, my new director of operations to my right. Across the table are 3 potential clients who have read the article, the one the journalist wrote the week after the wedding that wasn't, and who have come here because of it. Not in spite of the story. Because of it. Because there is a particular kind of client who, upon reading that story, about the woman who built a company quietly, who protected her equity carefully, who waited until the exact right moment and then walked to the front of the room and spoke the truth with documents and recordings and a legal team in the second row, understands immediately that this is the kind of operator they want managing their assets. The kind who plans 3 moves ahead. The kind who stays calm when the room is spinning. The kind who does not confuse silence with surrender. The meeting goes extremely well. Afterward, I stand at the window of the 14th floor and look out at the city, and somewhere out there Daniel is navigating whatever he's navigating, and Margaret is managing whatever she's managing. And the world is continuing in the way worlds continue, absorbing even dramatic truths eventually, smoothing them into the general texture of what happened. But the documents are filed. The recordings exist. The company is mine, clearly, correctly, with my name on every piece of paper that matters. And every morning when I come into this building and I see my name on the directory and I ride the elevator to the 14th floor and I sit down at a desk that sits inside a future that I built, I think about steady hands and a champagne tray and 43 minutes. I think about a kitchen hallway at 11 o'clock and the sound of my own engagement ring catching light. I think about staying quiet when quiet was a weapon and waiting when waiting was a plan. And then I open my laptop. And I go back to work. That's when he realized, when all of them realized, that he was never in control. He was just living inside a story I was still writing. Asterisk if you've ever been underestimated by someone who should have known exactly who you were, if you've ever had to stay quiet while you built something unassailable in the background, let me know in the comments. Because you are not alone in this. And the moment of clarity? It always comes, asterisk asterisk subscribe for more stories like this one. And if this hit differently today, share it with someone who needs to hear it.